Some mornings don't feel like mornings at all. They feel like a courtroom before the verdict. Quiet, polite, and full of something you can't name until it's too late. And the worst part isn't the shock when it hits. It's the slow, private grief of realizing the danger wasn't out there in the street. It was sitting across your own kitchen table smiling like nothing's wrong. Tonight's story isn't here so we can clap when someone gets what they deserve. And it's not here so we can throw stones at a woman who took the wrong road. If we can, let's walk into this one with a little stillness and a little compassion. Because sometimes what looks like the end of your life is really a door slamming shut so another one can finally open. Sometimes survival doesn't sound heroic. Sometimes it smells like coffee. So if you're with us, stay close. Because this isn't just about a cup that smelled like bitter almonds. It's about what a man does when he realizes the person he trusted most may be writing his last chapter for him. And how in 20 minutes everything he thought he knew collapses. Before I share the story, I want to know you are here with me. Just say listening in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far a story can reach, and honestly, sometimes even the smallest connection is what keeps you steady when your own home turns against you. Thank you. And now, here's my story. If you've ever been made to feel crazy for noticing what's real, please subscribe and stay with me because this isn't just a story for entertainment, it's a warning and a way out. My name is Evander Rook and I need you to hear what happened next. He said good for us, and Sloan didn't blink. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid, but paranoia didn't make HR send emails. It came through at 11:43 p.m., a flagged message requesting I attend a wellness review, part of the firm's new initiative on mental health and litigation stress. The wording was neutral, almost kind. The part that rattled me was the addendum: we've scheduled you for an individual check-in with Employee Health Services on Friday at 9:00 a.m. I hadn't volunteered for anything, and I sure as hell didn't ask for help. I showed up to that appointment in my best blue suit tie, knotted tight, every pore screaming litigation ready. The HR rep, Melissa or Michelle, I didn't care, led with a smile and a clipboard and started ticking boxes. How many hours do you sleep? Have you noticed irritability? Any use of controlled substances or off-label prescriptions? I knew this dance. Ask enough leading questions, and any tired man looks unstable. I kept my answers clipped, calm, reasonable. But it was clear someone had put my name in that file. That night, I came home to murmurs behind the kitchen door. Sloan and Caldwell stopped speaking the moment they saw me. Sloan smiled, quick and thin. Caldwell sipped tea like it was brandy and asked, "So how'd your little meeting go? Did they give you a clean bill of sanity?" He knew. Somehow he knew. I barely slept. The next morning, there was a thermos on the counter. Homemade. Sloan called it a reset tonic, ginger turmeric, something else I didn't catch. I took a sip. It was bitter metallic. I made it halfway through the kitchen before the world started sliding sideways. Stomach cramps hit first, sharp enough to buckle my knees. Then nausea, cold sweats, my hands shaking too hard to unlock my phone. Sloan appeared suddenly at my side, eyes wide, tears already blooming. She called an ambulance with impressive speed. Caldwell rode along in the back, said nothing, watched everything. At Northwestern Memorial, they ran tests, ruled out the big stuff. No stroke, no heart issue. A nurse checked my pupils twice. I remember her hesitating before she said, "Your symptoms." They look like mild toxin exposure. Nothing lethal but consistent with certain chemicals, low dose, repeated. She asked if I worked around anything unusual. I didn't. I worked in conference rooms. After 2 IV bags and a night of observation, they discharged me with a diagnosis of probable foodborne illness, but I knew better. And worse, I knew the pattern. Because it wasn't the first time. There had been others episodes I brushed off as stress or flu, always after Sloan insisted on taking care of me. Always when a big meeting or promotion was on the horizon. And now with partnership looming, suddenly I was sick, flagged, and being watched. Back home, I didn't unpack. I investigated. The first clue was my desktop. The password had been changed subtly, 1 digit replaced. Someone had reset it and tried to change it back. A rookie move. Worse, the login history showed access during the window I'd been hospitalized. I was on a gurney when someone sat in my chair. The folder for the class action case had been opened. Not edited, just viewed. But that was enough. Confidential client data strategy memos, timelines. Enough to sink the case or sabotage it. I sat there for a long time, the quiet of the room somehow too thick. Then I heard a knock. Sloane stood in the doorway smiling like nothing had changed. "You look better," she said. "Must have just been a bug." But I knew. This wasn't illness. This was interference. And it wasn't random. It was timed. Every step forward I took someone in this house made sure I stumbled. And if they couldn't push me off course, they'd make damn sure no one believed me when I said I was being pushed. I needed proof. I needed clarity. I needed time. But I was out of all three. So I smiled back at my wife. And I told her I felt just fine. I should have known from the moment Rowan Pike closed the door behind me. He never did that. Not unless it was serious. His office overlooked the frozen stretch of Lake Michigan, the window half fogged from the heater humming below. He didn't sit behind his desk either, just leaned against the edge like a father about to level with his kid about life's harsh truths. "There's talk," he said. He didn't need to explain what kind. "In a firm like ours, rumors could erode you faster than failure." "Nothing formal," he continued. "But some of the partners are asking questions about your energy, focus, your health, whether it's time to shift lead on the Mass Gen suit." I didn't say anything. I told them to hold off. "That I've seen nothing to warrant it," Rowan added. "But Evander, someone's making it look like you're unraveling, and not through official memos, through the small things. Things no one can prove, but everyone whispers." He gave me a long look. "You're being played from the inside." I nodded, thanked him, and walked out without another word. The truth wasn't shocking. It was clarifying. At home, I didn't speak to Sloane or Caldwell. I nodded where appropriate, let Sloane hand me a cup of her hand-pressed tea, and went upstairs to lock myself in my office. If they wanted me unstable, I'd be silent. If they wanted me off balance, I'd plant my feet. I began backing up all MassGen files to encrypted storage off-network. I reset passwords, enabled two-factor authentication, and placed every trace of firm correspondence outside this house's walls. This wasn't a home anymore. It was a scene under surveillance. And then I found it. In the hallway cabinet between the spare linens and a stack of expired cold meds wedged beneath an old insurance policy was a folded receipt. I don't know what made me open it. Maybe instinct. Maybe dread. LabTech Industrial Supply, Aurora IL 3 items, isopropyl compound, 98%, syringe, kit medical grade, micro-container vials. Subtotal $112.65 paid cash. The date was from 3 weeks ago. The name on the transaction was Caldwell Merritt. I walked into the kitchen holding the paper in 2 fingers. "Hey babe," I said, careful with my tone. "Do you know what this is?" Sloane didn't even blink. "Oh, that. Yeah, Dad's been doing these weird resin projects, like casting flowers in clear blocks. Said he saw it on YouTube." I raised a brow. "With syringes?" She gave a light laugh. "You'd be surprised what artists use." But there were no art supplies, no flowers and resin blocks, no plastic molds or gloves or droplet cloths in the garage. Just one new toolbox, sleek, untouched, tucked behind our snow tires like it didn't want to be found. Inside that box were more containers. A dropper. A sealed plastic bottle with no label. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The moment I saw it, a line from the hospital came back sharp. Some cases of low-dose chemical exposure. I returned it to its hiding spot. Quietly, deliberately. My name was still on the deed. If I confronted them now, they'd flip the script in seconds. Later that night, I came home early from a fabricated client dinner and found Caldwell in my office. He wasn't startled. That was the most chilling part. He looked up casually from my laptop hands, mid-hover over the keys. "Need to print the Medicare stuff. Yours is the only one connected to the Wi-Fi," he said. The window he had open was a PDF preview of my upcoming partner meeting schedule. The printer next to him buzzed halfway through, churning out documents that should have never left the firm. I didn't say a word. Sloan came in behind me moments later, gasping like I'd walked in swinging fists. "Evander, what are you doing? You look ready to snap." I didn't say anything. I replied calmly. "You're scaring him," she said. "You've been so on edge lately. Maybe you should talk to someone. It's just a printer." And I realized in that moment that I was already losing control of the narrative. They were baiting me. Any raised voice, any flash of temper was a scene they could replay as evidence. See, he's paranoid, dangerous, unwell. I waited until they both turned in for the night. In the bottom of Caldwell's briefcase, nestled under tax returns and investment flyers, I found it a legal draft. It wasn't signed, but it was real. A proposed durable power of attorney form. It named Sloan as primary agent. It included language for asset management in the event of mental unfitness. No dates, no accusations, just preparation. They weren't just angling to push me off the partner track. They were getting ready to own me. It started with a knock on my glass office door the next morning, and an envelope that felt heavier than paper had any right to be, from HR. The message was dressed in polite compliance. Given recent concerns surrounding your health and well-being and in the interest of firm continuity, the management committee has decided to temporarily reassign oversight of MassGen to senior counsel. I stopped reading. It was done. They were moving me sideways off the case I'd bled for, the one that was my ticket to partner. And they weren't doing it with a firing. They were doing it with concern. Every word in that memo had been polished by legal. Every line made it sound like a favor, a safety net, a collaborative decision. But it was death by policy, professional exile without cause. I went back to my office, closed the blinds, and opened a blank document. I started writing, every date, every incident. I charted the first dizzy spell, the night in the ER, the day Caldwell moved in, the HR evaluation, the opened folder, the printer logs, the fake concern. Every event layered over the last like sediment. Then I laid a trap. On my laptop, I created a folder titled MassGen, Internal Revisions. Inside, I placed a decoy file, a harmless document embedded with a tracker that would notify me the moment it was opened and log which device did it. I hid the folder just deep enough to draw a digger. Not so deep as to make it look baited. Then I ordered a small motion-sensing camera from the same site I used for home depositions. I had it delivered to the office. I wasn't just being watched. I was now watching back. That afternoon, I went to River North for a double espresso. It wasn't about the caffeine, it was calibration. I wanted to lock the memory of normal into my senses, how fresh coffee should smell, how it should feel. So when the almond bitterness came again, I'd know it wasn't stress or imagination. Then I drove to Aurora. The lab supply store sat in a dull strip mall between a tire shop and an abandoned diner. I walked in like I belonged, showed the clerk the receipt, and asked if they could confirm the transaction. "Customer privacy," he said. So I changed tack. "Here's the deal," I said. "I'm a lawyer. There's a potential case of identity fraud, and I just need to verify this isn't connected. If you can't tell me who bought it, fine. Can you confirm if this was paid in cash or card? That's all I need." He hesitated, then nodded. "Cash. And do these purchases happen often? Like, is this a one-time thing or a regular?" He shrugged. "Can't say. Maybe check your security team. Cameras loop every 30 days, though. That was all I needed." Back home, the house was humming like usual. Caldwell sat in his usual chair at the kitchen island, sipping from one of our mugs. "You're home late," he said, not looking up. "You always know my schedule?" I asked. He grinned. "You're a creature of habit." Sloan came in from the back patio, brow pinched like I'd already done something wrong. "You're dodging again," she said. "Don't you think I notice? Where do you go for hours? What are you hiding?" It was a performance, but a good one. They weren't trying to win. They were trying to get me to lose. I checked the tracker file that night. It had been opened. Not just opened, downloaded onto a secondary device I didn't recognize. There was now digital proof that someone inside this house had accessed a private legal file under false pretenses. Then the next blow landed. An alert from my bank. A failed attempt to authorize access to my financial accounts, one that would have added Sloan as a joint signer. It was logged under maintenance request. They were accelerating. The next morning I called the chemical supply store, pushed a little harder. The man on the phone confirmed there had been not one but 3 purchases over the past 2 months. All similar items, all paid in cash. There was no art project. This was dosing, and if the pattern held, another dose was due soon. I sat in my car staring through the windshield at the frost-rimed world beyond it and realized the most dangerous part of this wasn't the chemicals or the lies. It was the fact that no one outside that house would believe me until it was too late. The pressure didn't arrive all at once. It tightened the way a vice does, quietly, increment by increment, until I realized breathing normally took effort. At the firm, the tone shifted from cautious to managerial. I was no longer being asked how I was holding up. I was being told what would be best for everyone. HR called it a temporary measure, a precaution, a chance to recharge. The MassGen case would be redistributed just partially, just until I was back to full capacity. The language was clean. The effect was surgical. I was being moved away from the center without anyone admitting they were cutting. Rowan didn't fight it the way he would have before. He pulled me aside, eyes tired, and said he was running out of leverage. They're framing it as protection, he told me. Once that sticks, everything you do looks like resistance. I thanked him and walked out already, understanding that whatever came next wouldn't be handled in conference rooms. At home, Sloan was waiting with a different kind of meeting. No clipboard this time. Just the couch, soft lighting, her voice calibrated to concern. She asked if I'd been sleeping, if I'd noticed my temper, if I ever felt like people were against me. The questions landed one by one, spaced just far enough apart to feel reasonable. Caldwell sat across from us, hands folded, nodding along like a man watching a doctor deliver a diagnosis he'd already paid for. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I let the silence stretch. That more than anything unsettled them. Upstairs, behind a locked door, I reviewed the logs. The tracker had done its job. The decoy file had been accessed twice since the last check, both times from a device not registered to me, both times during hours when I was either at work or asleep. I captured screenshots, exported metadata, and stored everything on an encrypted drive that never came home with me. I emailed copies to a colleague I trusted, a former clerk who understood that sometimes evidence mattered more if you didn't have it on you. I also scheduled tests, not the kind HR liked, blood, urine, hair. I told the physician exactly why. I didn't want a diagnosis, I wanted exposure data. I wanted timestamps inside my own body. That night they escalated. I had just closed my office door when voices rose downstairs. A thud, then another. Caldwell shouted my name. Sloan screamed. I opened the door to find them standing just far enough apart to look like a scene. The front door was open. A neighbor hovered on the sidewalk. Sloan's voice shook as she said I'd locked myself away, that she was afraid I might hurt myself. Caldwell added that I'd been acting erratic for weeks. I understood the trap the moment it closed. If I protested, I'd be confirming their story. If I left, I'd abandon the house, the evidence, the ground they were trying to seize. When a squad car rolled up for a wellness check, my hands stayed visible, my voice level. I answered every question with facts, dates, events, no emotion. The officers exchanged glances, unsure which version of me they'd been called to meet. They left without incident, but the message was delivered. They could summon authority whenever they wanted. And next time it might not end so cleanly. Later, alone in the garage, I reviewed footage from the camera I'd placed weeks earlier. Caldwell walked without his cane when he thought no one was watching, lifted boxes, bent at the waist. The injury that justified his presence dissolved the moment privacy did. I copied the clips and sent them out of the house. I also found new paperwork, a revised beneficiary form, an unsigned but prepared insurance document, language that transferred control if I were deemed incapacitated. It wasn't about concern. It was about access. That night I set a rule for myself and wrote it down where I could see it every morning. I would not react. I would record. I would let them believe their pressure was working because pressure makes people careless, and careless people leave trails. The call came before sunrise. Rowan again. His voice was tight. The partner vote had been moved up. 48 hours. HR wanted me to stay home the day of the meeting, citing health. They didn't want unpredictability in the room. They wanted absence. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Everything they'd done converged on that window. I checked my email and found a message I hadn't opened yet, flagged urgent, describing concerns about my mental state. The language was familiar, polished, anonymous. It read like someone who knew the firm's voice from the inside. Later that morning, the lab called. The results weren't dramatic, but they were enough. Markers consistent with repeated low-level exposure. Not food poisoning. Not anxiety. A pattern. Objective. Documented. I thanked the technician and asked for a written summary. I reached out to a contact I'd made years ago, an investigator who now consulted on white-collar cases. I didn't accuse anyone. I laid out facts, timelines, receipts, medical notes. I asked how to preserve a scene if something happened. He listened, then told me to stop confronting anyone and start documenting everything. Back home, the house felt staged. Too quiet. Sloan hovered, offering supplements, tea, anything to help me rest. Caldwell leaned into the role of the worried father, telling me to slow down, to trust them. They suggested I take something to sleep, something to calm my nerves. I agreed. I set up the last cameras that afternoon. Kitchen, dining table, hallway. I aligned mugs on the counter, identical clean. I sent one final packet of evidence out of the house and deleted the originals. Then I let my shoulders slump. Let my voice thin. Let them see what they expected. That evening, another alert came through. A small transfer attempt. A change request. Someone was testing the gate. Then Rowan called one last time. He told me a report had circulated internally describing me as unstable, possibly self-harming. It cited concern from a family member. It carried weight. I sat at the dining table while Sloan talked about making coffee in the morning so we could talk calmly before everything blew over. Caldwell watched me like an investor watching the market close. I nodded. I told them I was exhausted. I let them think the house had finally won. Upstairs, I lay awake, listening to the pipes click and the floorboards shift. I knew what was coming. I knew when, and for the first time since this began, I wasn't afraid. Morning would bring a cup, and with it an answer no one could walk away from. Dawn in Chicago is usually a muted gray thing, light seeping through like it's negotiating its way in. But that morning the air felt different. Sharper, exact, as if the city understood something was about to break. I woke before my alarm. My body still carried the exhaustion from weeks of low-grade poisoning, but my mind was clear in a way I hadn't felt in months. I lay still for a moment, listening to the house. Silence. The kind of silence that meant everyone was awake before they wanted me awake. I sat up, checked my phone, and saw the automated notification all the camera feeds had uploaded their final overnight sync to off-site storage. The evidence was safe. Even if my devices disappeared today, the data wouldn't. A second notification came in, this one from Rowan. Partner vote moved up. HR still insisting you stay home today. Call me when you can, and Evander, be careful. They're expecting something. The message confirmed what I already knew. Whatever they planned, it had to happen before the meeting. I walked downstairs. The kitchen was staged like a photograph, sunlight coming through the blinds in deliberate stripes, 2 identical white stone mugs on the table, the carafe steaming, a dish towel folded neatly beside the sink. Sloan never folded it like that, only when she wanted things to look controlled. She turned when she heard me. "You're up early," she said softly, as if afraid to disrupt the spell. "Sit. I'll make your coffee. It'll help you settle before you talk to HR again." Her tone was almost tender, but I recognized the scanning in her eyes, checking my pupils, my posture, reading whether the performance she expected from me was still intact. Caldwell sat at the table, leaning back like a lord of the manor, hands folded over his stomach. His cane rested beside him, though he wasn't touching it. His stare locked onto me the moment I entered. "You'll need something strong today," he said. "Big decisions. Not your decisions. Theirs." I took my seat, said nothing. Sloane brought the mug to me, placed it directly in front of me and brushed her fingers against the handle like she was giving me something fragile. I lifted it. The smell hit instantly. Sweet, sharp, chemical. Overlaid with the distinct, unmistakable scent I'd trained myself to recognize by comparing it to untouched espresso for weeks. Bitter almonds. I didn't flinch, but I let the pause sit long enough for the camera to capture my hesitation. Long enough for Sloane's breath to hitch while she waited. "Drink it while it's hot," she urged, voice thinly veiled with anticipation. Caldwell smirked. I placed the mug down gently. "1 second," I said. "I need to wash my face." Still not feeling great. Sloane's eyes flickered surprise, then recalculation. Caldwell looked annoyed. But I stood, walked down the hallway, and made sure to pass the exact camera angle that showed the mug still untouched on the table. In the bathroom, I didn't wash my face. I just counted 5, 10, 15 seconds. Enough time to look natural. Enough for the footage to show I hadn't tampered with anything yet. I returned to the kitchen. "Sorry," I said, taking my seat again. "Let me take care of something first." I turned to Caldwell. "You look tired this morning. Let me make you a fresh cup stronger. You always say you like yours bold." His eyes brightened with a gluttonous pride. He tried to wave me off, but the eagerness betrayed him. Sloane opened her mouth, but I cut in smoothly. "Let me get it for you. It's the least I can do." I stood, took another identical mug from the cabinet, and poured directly from the carafe. Steam rose. Normal. No almond scent, no chemical sting. Just coffee. I lifted the mug, inhaled once, and confirmed it would pass any forensic test later. The pot itself wasn't contaminated. Only the mug Sloane had set aside for me. Back at the table, I placed the fresh mug before Caldwell. Then casually, I adjusted the napkin, nudged the spoon, and shifted the 2 mugs as if clearing space. The poisoned mug slid into his reach. He didn't hesitate. He wrapped both hands around it, lifted it to his lips, and took a long, satisfied drink. "That's more like it," he said. I lifted my own safe mug and took a sip. Smooth, normal grounding. I set it down exactly where the camera could see. 10 minutes passed. Caldwell shifted in his seat, rubbed his chest. "Tightness," he muttered. "Damn reflux." Sloane glanced at him, then at me. 5 more minutes. His breathing grew ragged. His forehead flushed deep red. His hand shook as he reached for the table. "You okay?" I asked lightly. He opened his mouth to speak, but only a wet gasp came out. His eyes bulged. His chair skidded back violently as he collapsed sideways. Sloane screamed, but not the way a daughter screams for her father. She screamed the way someone screams when their plan misfires. She lunged toward him and shouted, "No! Not that one you weren't supposed to." Then she froze, realizing what she'd said. I didn't move toward Caldwell. I didn't have to. My role now was evidence, not aid. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. "Yes," I said calmly. "We have a medical emergency. Possible poisoning. Adult male, mid-60s. Collapsed seizure-like activity. Send paramedics." Sloane grabbed my arm, eyes wild. "Evander, stop. Don't do this. You're making a mistake. Don't call anyone." I freed my arm gently. "You already made the mistake," I said, "and everything is recorded." Her face drained of all color. Paramedics arrived within minutes, the house filled with urgent voices, radio static, and the metallic cry of the stretcher unfolding. They asked questions. I answered efficiently. They inspected the mugs. I pointed out the one he drank from. They noted the scent immediately. One of them whispered, "Smells like cyanogenic compounds." As they wheeled Caldwell out, Rowan called again, "Evander. Are you okay? Something's happening at the firm. We're hearing rumors," I interrupted quietly. Rowan, listen to me. If you don't hear from me later today, this wasn't stress. And it wasn't self-inflicted. Silence. Then understood. Outside, the paramedics loaded Caldwell into the ambulance. Sloane stood in the doorway, chest heaving, her expression gone hollow. Just before the doors closed, he choked out one broken, slurred phrase. Wasn't meant for me. The doors slammed shut. The ambulance pulled away. I stood alone in the kitchen, the scent of almond still lingering in the mug beside me, knowing the quiet part of the war was over. What came next would be loud, public, irreversible. And this time, all the evidence was mine. The police sealed off the kitchen within minutes of the ambulance leaving our street. Yellow gloves, evidence bags labeled markers, flash photography slicing through the stillness. My home transformed into a legal battlefield I finally had the advantage in. I guided them methodically through everything. I didn't speculate. I didn't dramatize. I laid out the timeline like a trial attorney: my hospital visits, the anonymous HR complaints, the chemical receipts, the laptop intrusions, the camera logs, the mug swap. Every detail clipped clean, chronological, and verifiable. This is where she placed the mug, I said. This is where I left the room. This is the moment I returned. This is the mug he drank from. Detectives nodded, taking notes, marking positions. For every question, I had a document or a video ready. They collected both mugs, the spoon, the towel, the carafe, even the sugar packets. They dusted for prints. They took swabs from the rim. They logged everything. The house that had been my cage was now their evidence locker. In the garage, I showed them the hidden toolbox and the unlabeled container. They photographed the placement before touching it. The time-stamped image I'd taken weeks earlier became part of the chain of custody. When they asked why I hadn't reported earlier, I told them the truth, because when you report invisible harm without visible evidence, you become the suspect, not the victim. By afternoon, the hospital confirmed what we all already knew. Caldwell was dead. The toxicology panel detected cyanogenic compounds consistent with deliberate preparation. The concentration in his system was far above accidental exposure. But the real turning point wasn't Caldwell's results. It was mine. The lab forwarded my own test results taken days earlier, showing repeated low-dose exposure to the same compound over a prolonged period. The pattern was unmistakable. Weeks, months. The exact timeline of my stress-related episodes. This wasn't a one-day crime. It was a campaign. Detectives called Sloane in for questioning. She arrived at the station, polished, calm, ready to perform the role she knew best. The concerned wife, broken, bewildered, betrayed. But controlled environments aren't her strength. Interrogation rooms have no soft lighting, no staging, no audience. Just truth, pressure, and time. I watched from the observation room as they presented the footage, her placing the mug, her watching Caldwell drink, her scream, not him. Then they showed her the chemical purchase history, then the altered insurance documents, then the laptop logs. Piece by piece, her script burned away. She tried shifting the blame onto me, claimed I'd switched the mugs to harm her father. But the evidence crushed that instantly. I'd poured from the pot normal. Only one mug carried the compound. Only one mug was handled by her alone. And that's the part people rarely see after the headlines fade. The quiet minutes when the house is finally still and you realize you're not celebrating, you're just breathing again. If there's anything to take from this, it's that we don't always get hurt because we were foolish. Sometimes we get hurt because we were loyal, because we wanted peace, because we kept giving the benefit of the doubt until it cost too much. And even then, there's something human that survives your instincts, your dignity, the small choice to keep going. If this story hit a tender spot, you're not alone. We all carry a moment we didn't think we'd make it through, and somehow we did. So, if you'd like a place where stories like this can be heard without judgment, you're welcome here. You can subscribe not as a click, but as a way to join a community that listens, reflects, and shares what's real. And if you want to leave a few lines in the comments where you're watching from or what part stayed with you, no pressure. I read more than you think. Thanks for sitting with me through this. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next story. It started on a Tuesday. I remember because my calendar was color-coded by client load, and Tuesdays were red, always red. Morning in Chicago meant cold air through the brick cracks, the rustle of frost-bitten leaves, the skyline flashing steel and glass. I stood in our kitchen in Lincoln Park with a legal pad in one hand, a half-warm mug of coffee in the other, and the eerie sense that something in my own house had shifted just slightly off-center. That pad, my prep notes for the deposition, had a corner bent I didn't leave. That coffee, it didn't taste right, like it had been reheated twice. And the silence too curated, too aware. Sloane patted in moments later, all neutral tones and effortless grace, the kind of woman who could make a Tuesday morning look like a spread in Architectural Digest. She asked about my day, kissed my cheek, and slid her gaze just slightly toward the hallway as if someone else was listening. Someone was. Caldwell Merritt moved in 2 weeks ago. Sloane's father. Broken hip, bad timing, worse attitude. The first night he propped himself up on a cane and asked where I kept the deed to the house. Said it like a joke. Smiled like he meant it. At the firm things were sharper. The loop never slowed. I had a class action in discovery, 28 plaintiffs, a national supplier who'd cut corners on medical-grade tubing. My mentor, Rowan Pike Gray Suit Sharper Mind, started handing me the kinds of memos only candidates for partnership got to see. That wasn't nothing. That was the air getting thinner. That was the last stretch of the climb. But every time I went home, it felt like I was being pulled back down. Caldwell didn't so much live with us as operate. He asked questions disguised as small talk. How's that bonus work, son, per case or flat? They split the settlement with you, or do you have to fight for your slice? He said, partner the way gamblers say, jackpot. Every conversation looped back to money leverage legacy, not mine. Theirs. Sloane played her role to perfection. Whenever he pushed, she smoothed. Don't mind him, Van, he's old school. Or he just wants to see you do well. She didn't challenge. She redirected. Until I looked like the one overreacting. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. My office, formerly sacred, now had a second chair. Caldwell had accidentally printed his Medicare forms from my computer, which meant he had been in there. I didn't say anything, not yet. But I started noticing things. Documents on my desk slightly off-center. A partner meeting memo I'd printed last week, now loose in the printer tray. I hadn't printed it twice. One night over rotisserie chicken and tense wine, Caldwell fixed me with a grin like he already owned the place. When you make partner, he said, carving meat like a sermon, it'll be good for all of us. Finally, breathe a little easier, right? He didn't say good for me.